the third session of what is called the Asmaa Programme, a series about words that are associated with the document of human fraternity or Abrahamic family house. We began with dignity. We began with dignity and with grace. And I'll tell you a little about them, and now we have this third one, which is on house. So, dwelling. The first notion of house as a dwelling. With the first, as we know, the first kind of the image of the first scene of creation, right, after the creation of Adam and Eve, is soon exiled from the garden of paradise or Eden. And of course, this is a scene that has been depicted as the most iconic scene. This is a moment of birth, the moment of birth of humanity. Not when God creates Adam and Eve, because Adam and Eve are not quite human in paradise, right? They're not human in paradise. Why? They're not human? Because they don't die. Human beings need to die. They need to become mortal, right? Mortality makes us human, right? There's this time some kind of an abstract place. With exile, when they are cast from this wonderful place, which is a garden, it's not a house, right? It's a garden, it's open air, kind of. Because there, in Garden of Eden, you don't need shelter, you don't need walls, you don't need protection, you don't need inside and outside, you don't need safe and volatile. None of these things, they don't exist in the Garden of Eden. It is this moment of exile when we become human, and the need for shelter, another way of putting it, is that makes us human. Our humanity is defined for our needs. What is the first thing they're going to do? They're going to go look for shelter because now they need it. That's the first thing they do, right? And with this, of course, they set in motion history. History begins with this moment of running away, and now what? Look for a house. Look for a house, look for a shelter, look for food and gardening and all of those things. But then, this moment, of course, this exile, the original exile, has set in motion in all cultures, in all traditions, both biblical, Abrahamic, and non-Abrahamic, the desire to return home, to go back home, nostos, right? All these Greek, travelers, they go and they need to go back to Ithaca, Odysseus, and in Christianity, I think Father Stefano will join us a little later after Mass. Christianity is really about the journey or the desire, right, at any moment to what? To return to the origin, right? This is really about, and this is Christian eschatology with St. Augustine. I want to say something about the image that I have here, and this is a poem by Rumi. It's probably the most translated and the most familiar, the most universal poem. And this is a reed flute song. How many of you heard it? How many of you have heard it? And what it says is that it's a very famous one, and if I say maybe, it says that listen to the sound of the flute, reed flute. What is it saying? It says, since I was cut off from the riverbed, I've been making this sound. Anyone who's been cut off from the source wants to go back, right? These few lines, these two lines, بشنو از نی چون حکایت می‌کند از جدایی ها شکایت می‌کند, is the most, like Rumi became very famous. Rumi is the most famous and universal poet, right, of all times, because of these two lines. What is it? Of the language and what makes us speak at all is our desire to unite back to our origin. Something like to go back home, actually. Like what am I saying? All I'm saying is I want to go back home, basically, right? The desire to. Okay. House the second notion, right? I'm going to go quickly through these three notions, right? And then we will have a conversation. The second notion of house as family genealogy, right? Why do families need houses like that? The house, where does it actually come from, right? Relations, social relations, family relations, and this kind of genealogies actually need to be visualized somehow, right? And this problem of visualizing genealogies and families has been something that philosophers and scribes have been dealing with for a long time. Like, how do you actually represent your family and the connections? So we have had family trees mostly. This is like the way that we're familiar, you're in boxes, and of course scrolls, pages that they're different, but they have different connotations, and I like to talk about that. There's also universal history. So the family can be very small, it can be very big, or it can be the universal history. And these universal histories, and this is something that I want to spend a little time with, house as family genealogy and as a universal history, is, and I brought a copy that I'm going to show you how these universal histories work. So, beginning in the 13th century, rulers, mostly rulers, who were trying, rulers or aristocratic families, but mostly rulers, who were trying to position and situate themselves and their own house and their own person in universal history, actually. Like, where do I really belong in this vast cosmos or the history? And what they would do is to create a universal history. Oh, this is not clear enough. It's not clear enough. That would begin with Adam. This is Adam, okay? And this is a biblical history from creation. And it goes down all the way, I'm sorry, we cannot read this here. This is Noah, okay? And it goes down. From Noah, you come to Abraham, okay? So you come all the way to Abraham, and then, of course, we have Isaac, Ishaq, and Ismail, okay? So this goes down all the way, and of course, the universal history. So they would create, and this is what I'm going to show you, is a universal history that was written for Sultan Suleiman. And the reason I want to show you, because I want to make a point about it, right? So this is a universal history that, I like this even better. Because universal history starts with now, the now of Sultan Suleiman, right? This is universal history. It could have been the other way around. It could have started with Adam. And that's actually really beautiful because it makes my point that these scrolls, these universal histories, are represented in such a way that you can begin with now or you can begin with Adam, with creation, depending on which way you roll it, okay? So, this one, and this is it's not exact replica because the original is much, much longer, it's actually 7 meters, right? Let's see whether we can do this. It should be 7 meters, the original. Yeah? And that's only Sultan Suleiman, the 1600. Right? Let's see if I can. This way. Okay. So you can see at the point that universal history, so this is the house of Adam, if you like. Right? This is a house of Adam. And of course it should be 7 meters long. This is a shorter version. It goes from Adam's to Sultan Suleiman. And why would Sultan Suleiman, let's say the 16th century, right? Why would rulers, why would people want to put themselves in this house in this way? What does it actually do, right? It gives you a place in history, right? A place in history connects you to the origins, and that's really quite important. Now, what is the advantage of having this kind of really awkward scroll rather than a page, a book? You can present it in different ways. What does actually the form of a scroll do that a page or the other images that we saw don't do? But it is here. Okay? What it does is that scroll houses history in a very different way. It houses history in a different way. And what it does is that when this is original scroll, okay, this one, this one, is parchment. It's not this cheap, this cheap paper. It's actual parchment. When you really roll it really tight, the original one, it becomes about 4 inches, right, thick. And what you have now is a three-dimensional object. History becomes a three-dimensional object with a center that has either Adam, the founder, the first man, the seed of history, inside it, right? Or whoever ruler or whoever it is, really, you or the now inside it, right? And this kind of representing or a scroll, right, has, as you can see, theological implications. Does that make sense? Because, in fact, this history is a construct, is a fabrication. Time, really, theologically, time, human time is only human time. It really doesn't exist, right? It is not, time is not some linear, begins here, linear and goes from here to there. It's just a construct, right? It's a way of us representing it. It's a way of housing it. How can we house history in a way that is more conducive to better relations, to better values, to better theology, to more correct theology, closer to the truth of time and reality? Does that make sense? So the scroll, right, they thought it actually represents it more clearly because it has the origin of time right there, there, right? You see it right there. It's not some way back when, it's right there all the time. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, of course, this thing itself, as you see, scrolls need what? Houses too. Right? Have an image of it? Yeah, this is the image of it, right? Mm-hmm. Originally, they also made a box for it, right? Because scrolls need homes. And I think I'm going to ask the rabbi eventually why, when we do have the Abrahamic family house rabbi here, because, why did the original commandments need an ark, a chest, right? That's the first notion of a chest is a house, right, actually. Why did the original command need a chest? Why did God actually give exact measurements of how to build? Why is it so important to get instructions about how you house a commandment with the stone or a scroll? And still, Torah scrolls have to be housed, right? What is the purpose of that? Housing the scroll. Protection.
First and foremost.
Yes, protection, but I want to also add that yes, protection, that's the first thing. But it's also want to add the fact that it brings attention to the fact that it is housed, right? And it's not willy-nilly. Otherwise, God wouldn't spend all this time and say, make it exactly in this way, right? Make it exactly. Why does it have to be exactly in this way? Like the architecture of it becomes really important, right? Symbolically it becomes important. Otherwise, you say make a really, really hard, sturdy protection. So, the third notion that I want to just allude to is something that I did allude to earlier with the, thank you very much. With language as a house that of being, and the importance of language as a house. The other day, 2 days ago, we had Father Stefano speak about the document of human fraternity and what are the novelties of what is so new about, what is like the novel aspects of this document. And there are 4 or 5 that he mentioned, and the last 2 were very interesting for me and relevant for us here, was that somehow the writers of this document, which is His Holiness the Pope and the Imam Azhar, they wrote something together. They signed it for the first time. This is what Father Stefano mentioned. But also he said that people who know this document well, they talked about this strange language of it, right? That it was new, that this is really, why did the grammar and the words, there is something strange about it, something new. And so we talked about the fact that, and Father Stefano said that it was written in such a way that both the Muslims and Christians could read their own perspective and theology in it. They could recognize themselves in it. And that was really interesting. And so the language, right, could not be used. The language could not be what has been used before. That's really the point. A new language had to be created to do something new. If you just have some idea and you use the same old language, it won't create the same effect. And that's really somehow what we're talking about, that language itself is a house of being. With a new language, you create new life. And if you want to create new life, or new vision, or something about the future, even if you're commemorating 800th anniversary of the meeting of St. Francis with the Sultan of Egypt, right? Even if you're commemorating past events, right? You have to renovate it. You have to create a new language, right? So language is what pushes forward. I want to close this little really interlude, and then we will get into our own kind of conversation with some images of all the houses that I could have chosen for us really to discuss, to discuss today, to bring what I call not the Ark of Noah, but I call the boat house of Noah, is very relevant to me, and I think to at this moment in history, at this moment to the life in UAE. This is really kind of my reading, right? Because first of all, the Ark, it was not a boat, just like a boat, right? It really was a house. That's another thing, that's another moment where God gives instructions of how to create I think I have a text, right? Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and outside with pitch, which is kind of like a covering, right? So he gives really specific instructions about how to make rooms with it, how to make coverings in it, and so on, compartments in it. And so this floating house, right? Because it's also not a ship that starts going from here to there. When we say a ship or an ark, a boat, usually you have to get in it, you go from somewhere to somewhere. This is just not one of those things, right? It's just that you make a house, you go in it, and make sure that it floats, because there's going to be a lot of water very soon. That's really the point, like a floating house for a while, right? And so Noah is in there with his household and with, animals from two of every species. And after a while, he sends, what is the first bird that he sends out? Not a vulture, right?
Raven.
A raven, yes, a crow. Yes, the first one he sends out is a raven, who's looking for maybe, corpses, and nothing happens. And then he sends a dove. The dove eventually comes back. I'm not going to give you, so eventually comes back, with an olive branch saying that, land is there. I've come, land, And then departs again, doesn't come back. So we know, Noah knows there is land. The ship has landed, the boat has landed. Noah doesn't get off the boat for 1 week, and that for me is very interesting, right? Why doesn't he get off the boat? There's land. What's he doing for 1 week there? Until God tells him, evicts him. Actually, there's an eviction notice that he gets, get off the boat, get off, it's finished, you have to get out. This is for me, it's like a poignant moment, right? First of all, how quickly we get attached to prisons, how quickly we get attached to whatever abode that it is, this floating house, right? And that is human. That's human nature. And how difficult it is to get off the boat and start building a new house. It is not get off and build a house. It's not a given. It's not easy. It's not, yes, a house here and a house there, Aldar, I love the word Aldar, which is really the word for houses, Aldar does it very easily, it's really see that. But it's not an easy thing. It is like a whole, to get off in a new land and build a house. And then, as we said, it becomes a house when he goes in there. First of all, he plants the vineyard, and then he goes in there with his household. And there comes the universal history that we just saw. But in 7-meter long scroll, right? Eventually, he divides the land, and this is this discussion we had 2 days ago. He divides the land between his. Actually, I like this. This is a print. It's a 16th century print of a 4th century etymology of a book of. It's called Etymology. That goes the earliest depiction of geography according to Noah, because what Noah does, that's the first geography that we have actually, and the names that he gives to his tribes are the names that are with us today, right? It's a very interesting thing. So he divides the world and he gives of his children, go build a house here and name it. He creates the first houses, the first genealogies right there and there, as you see in here. This is the Rembrandt is the boarding ark, and of course is very interesting, going there. I put the raft of Medusa on the right because it's a very famous painting, and I just wanted to show that this is a very different thing. Yeah, the Ark of Noah is not a raft of survivors, right? It is an actual house and a home. Right? It's not just survivors. And this is also very interesting. This is a Dutch, and it's actually a house in a boat. That's a Dutch painting. And so, yeah, maybe this is a very good image to end with. This is, of course, the rainbow, the arc. So it's also called, and I love this, the fact that it's a rainbow is an arc itself, right? So in fact, the boat, the arc is reversed, and it becomes the promise, the covenant with humanity. The covenant with humanity is a reversed boat, and it creates what? A shelter. It creates the ark upside down. It becomes the covenant with humanity, always reminding you, of course, of the floating house, right? And becomes the, I would say, what is it? Like the first notion of, or one of the first notions of a house, right? As a shelter and a covenant, a shelter as a house, as a covenant with God. And it would be a good place for me to end it here. Spoken for a while. And usually it's very nice we have actually a big group of people here, and usually what we do here is we do a little bit of a workshop, if you agree and you stay with us, is that I would like to ask you to take about 10 minutes, and I'm going to write responses to a few questions that I have put here. And then we get into a circle and then we speak about it, right? It's okay if you have to go, it is fine. But I would like you to stay, and then usually the best part of these sessions is when we start talking to each other. So please take one of the notebooks that you have, right? There should be a notebook and a pen, please. And the questions that I've asked here I've just given examples of what you might want to talk about, right? But the question is this. If English is not your first language, please translate the word house into your original, into your mother tongue. And think about the first experience of being in a house. Or when I say the first, it could be the most memorable, the one that is make the most impression on you, the one that you have gone through in your dreams and other people were living in there, the houses that don't exist yet maybe, or your grandparents know what it is. And write, what is the connotation? What makes it a home? Or unhomely, if you want, right? And I put some questions here. What meanings do you attach to this notion of house? It could be a prison, or it could be safety. I don't know, right? But there are different meanings that I've got in there. You can also write about, if you don't want to talk about this first experience of the house, talk about hospitality, house and hospitality, because hospitality also is very much related to the notion of a house, right? Maybe if you cannot be, what makes a house is the ability to be hospitable, right? What makes a house is your ability to be hospitable. You cannot be hospitable, it's not even a house anymore. Right? You cannot have people in there and offer them something. It's something else, right? Maybe it's hospitality to make a house. Or if you want to write about the Earth as a home, or what are the challenges of this planetary thinking, the house, this universal, Adam as our origin, and then making Earth, everybody talks about Earth is our home. What are the challenges of that kind of thinking? So now this is a little more intimate, and I've talked for a while. I would like to comment, question, respond, read first. I'm a teacher, so I do for all the people. I do.
Okay, I'm going to go first. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great.